Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Entreprenudist podcast, a place to hear real entrepreneurs and business owners bear it all, ranked in the top 10% of podcasts by listing notes, the billboard of podcasts. If you want to see the video version of this podcast, always check the show description, where if you want to just see our beautiful faces or see what's going on, chances are 9 times out of 10, you'll be able to see that video and not just the lovely audio. Please, to my guests, tell people, who are you and what do you do?
Good afternoon. My name is Yara Banks. I am the CEO of BNX Business Advisors. We are a nationwide integrated HR solutions provider.
A nationwide integrated solutions provider. That's it. How long you been doing that?
So BNX Business Advisors has been almost 3 years old, but I have over 20 years of experience of integrated HR and operations experience. When I say integrated solutions, the reason I say that is because people have a mindset, right, about what human resources is. And then, so we go with that. We'll go with what they think it is, right? But then we also have a business aspect of it. So you'll be able to take those people and turn them into dollars. They're not just people. They're not just behinds in a seat, so we're going to turn them into dollars. So can we work on process improvement? Can we work on workflow? Can we do standard operating procedures? Can we do forecasting? Can we do strategic alignment? Those things will help us set up the proper workforce, right? So if you can talk the business side and to the balance sheet, and then you can talk to the human side, the capital asset piece, hey, you're cooking with grease.
Oh yeah, cooking with grease. Fish grease, as my people used to say. Now we cooking with some fish grease, right? But that is interesting, because I have seen to where sometimes the human resources falls under operations, and sometimes it falls under the financial side of things. And to your point, I want to touch on that. Is there nothing that you know now that you've done so much time in the industry, and then starting going on 3 years with BNX? Is there nothing that you know now that you wish you knew when you first started?
Yes, I wish I knew how to speak the language. And the language I'm talking about is the language of the balance sheet. I didn't know how to speak it to an extent, right? So when you're in HR, you have tunnel vision. When you're in business operations, you have tunnel vision. But how to speak the language so that you are bilingual, so to speak, right? And so understanding who your audience is, any type of business, you need to really understand who your audience is. You need to really get in touch with your ideal client profile, your ideal customer profile. How do they think? Where do they get their information? What words or solutions pop out at them? You need to understand what their pain points are. It's great to start a business, as you know, Randall, start a business, say, hey, this is fun. I like it. I'm going to do this. But if the market doesn't demand it, no one's looking for that, you're not going to be successful. So really what I learned just as an entrepreneur, take away from the skills I had before I started this, was really how to speak to that audience, how to be able to articulate their pain points and my solution for them.
Because I get what you're saying, and I watch a lot of movies where, you know, sometimes it's time period movies to where one country is invading another, and the only people that they would keep alive, let's say they coming in to pillage and to destroy, the only people that they would keep alive are the people who knew how to speak their language, right? You would
Translators.
see that one moment in the scene where they realize that this person can speak their language, and all of a sudden they just killed 100 other people, but they let that person alive because the ability to communicate, the highest form of compensation is communication.
That's
right. The
right.
ability to communicate is what gets to those dollars. And it sounds like what you're saying is, in the beginning, you knew the problems from an HR perspective, but you did not know how to articulate it to where they could see the bottom line show up on that financial side.
That's correct. That's correct.
Oh man, so when you figured out that solution, was it one of those things to where, all right, I'm an HR person and I know how to articulate how it translates on the bottom line. Does that mean that any HR professional can work in any industry? Is it like a general practice type thing or a specialist type thing?
No, that's a good question. So here's the thing. First, let me say this. I recently read a study that said 83% of CEOs polled did not know what HR does. What's their full gamut of what they can do. What that tells me are a lot of things. A, they're not being used to their full potential. B, they may not even recognize it because, again, we have tunnel vision and we're pigeonholed, right? So I didn't know initially that I didn't know what I didn't know. Okay, so it took me a minute to figure that out. I don't, first of all, human resources, everybody needs, it's like a doctor. Every organization needs human resources. So that goes without saying. But depending on where you are and the size and culture of the organization, HR may not have a seat at that table. And so if you're not exposed to the proverbial table, you won't be exposed to the language, right? You know, okay, well, I'm supposed to hire people. All I know is job descriptions, how to use the little website where people post, how to do some interviews, but I don't know what the next part of it is or how this role plays out in the larger organizational goals. So I can't speak to the organizational strategy, the organizational alignment, if all I do is this one little thing in a bubble. But as far as principles, as far as most of the regulations, they do transcend no matter what industry. And it's funny because you'll see a lot of ads say, oh, I need the HR person, but they have got to have experience working in a dairy farm. Like, you know, or they have to have experience working in manufacturing or tech. The culture is a little different, but if you understand workplace culture and how to navigate that and how to work towards change management, at the end of the day, that's not even going to matter. It's not even going to matter.
Because it seems like somebody would be saying that, basically saying, hey, I know what you typically think HR should look like, Mrs. 20-year professional, but we're different. It's 1,000 industries, but our industry is different. And we want to make sure you know that we're different, so you can't just put us in a box. Is that what they're trying to convey? I
think they're trying to convey that they're different, but I don't think it's an intentional we're different. They honestly believe it's somehow different. They honestly believe it's somehow different. And when I say it, what I'm referring to is the compliance piece of it, the process of it, the forms, you know, the regular stuff. Culture is definitely going to be different. I can give you an example. I recently worked on a contract for an organization, and it was a credit union that that merged with another credit union and then acquired a bank all in a year of all in the span of like 2 years. Now, most people, okay, it's all finance industry, right? But way different cultures. Banks are about dollars. Credit unions are about the community and their members. You know, the community, the credit union belongs to the community. The bank belongs to the board of directors and their shareholders. So it's different. So what I'm after, what I'm trying to convey, my interactions are completely different between a bank and a credit union. So you talk about a clash. Oh, it was a huge clash. Even everything down to their dress, how they wear their clothes. Credit union people, I'm all about the neighborhood. If I'm rural, I'm out here on the farm, and I'm some credit union out there, all my people are farmers. I'm probably wearing jeans to work. It's different. If I'm downtown New York and I'm working in a bank, the dress is different. The goals, even so much as I remember they had this, sign up for a checking account and get the proverbial toaster, right? Well, if I'm a farmer, toaster's really not doing that for me. If I'm somebody who eats at the bagel shop on my way to work every morning, a toaster's really not doing it for me. So how can we define our culture as a whole, but then have sex of it depending on where our geographic location is? We had to work all that out because they had 14 different locations. So that's what the kind of stuff I'm talking about. It's obvious. You think finance, oh, it's the same. Not the same. Not the same.
And I think that's good. Because what you're saying is you understand that each of these industries have their unique factors, and then subsets of that
Absolutely.
have their unique factors. And if somebody is dealing with a true HR professional, they're not going to treat them like a cookie cutter. They're going to take the
Exactly.
time to observe and see what the norms are, and then you're going to make sure that those norms keep your uniqueness, but
Hmm.
make sure those norms don't get you into trouble with compliance down the road. Because
Absolutely.
who cares about a company culture if your company just got shut down when it could have avoided something very, very obvious to somebody like you?
Right. And to have a sustainable growing culture where people feel valued, they feel part of something bigger than themselves, drives productivity. It drives loyalty. Everybody innately wants to do the right thing. Give them all the tools and resources to do that. Give them everything they need, whether it's training, whether it's equipment, whatever it is they need to give you 110, you give them 120.
Mm.
It's an asset. No more than you buy a Maserati, park it on the street. Don't put a cover on it. Never run the engine. Don't do an oil change. Don't wash it. No more than you spend that kind of money on an asset and let it sit there. Should you do the same thing with your human capital?
It sounds like that people should realize that once they get an employee in the door,
Mm-hmm.
that is just as valuable to keep them
Mm-hmm.
than it is to it's less expensive and more valuable to keep them than it is to try to find a replacement.
Absolutely. There are metrics like, cost to train, cost to hire, cost to recruiting. All those metrics are these wonderful algebraic expressions that will tell you how much this is costing you every time somebody walks out the door and you have to replace them. Not to mention the loss of productivity, right? Because you had 5 people doing it. Now you have 4 people doing it. Now you have 5 people, but that 5th person's a trainee. Things slow down,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, but I need you to understand this, and I need your listeners to understand this. The culture all starts with your mission and vision of an organization. It's got to start foundationally and work its way all the way through, weave itself all the way through the organization. But more importantly, that culture that you establish needs to go before you. It's like your reputation, right? The people who come and apply for jobs there, that's at the point you put out your first job posting, that's where they're first exposed to your culture.
Mm.
So treat them good, treat them bad. This is the experience they're going to have from the very beginning. We have
Ah.
a lot of people now looking for jobs and they're complaining they're getting ghosted by recruiters. People aren't responding to them or calling them back or making them have 5 and 6 interviews and not hiring them and not giving them feedback. That sets a nasty tone in this cancel culture, in the culture of social media where you can have reputational harm. You can go to Glassdoor and complain about your interview process at such and such company. You can go on Facebook and blast, TikTok, all of that. In our society, in our economy, we cannot afford that, especially as a growing, small, emerging, growing business. You cannot afford that reputational harm. So treat them right from the onset and keep that going.
And treating them right from the onset, that's very powerful. And I'm one of those people that believes all truths are parallel. What's typically workable in one facet and true and workable and true in one facet of life is workable and true in another.
That's
And
it.
in law, they have this thing called fruit from the forbidden tree, to
Yes.
where if you get, let's say you, a officer illegally pull somebody over, and then when they pull them over they find drugs or a weapon. If it's fruit from the forbidden tree, if you shouldn't have even pulled them over in the first place, you never would have found those drugs or found those
Absolutely.
weapons. So even though that was legitimate, what you found,
Hmm.
because you started out wrong, all of that you did is for nothing. That reminds me of somebody. If they were to hire somebody on, they treat them well. They give them that 120%, like you said. But what if they do this? And I'm going to bring up something because you're definitely a very well known and highly sought after HR consultant here in Jacksonville, Florida. You speak at a lot of events. I saw you speaking at Thrive one of SBA's programs, and you were speaking, and you said some things that people should not ask in an interview, and it seemed counterintuitive to me. Do you not have any examples of questions that you shouldn't ask people in their interview? Because even if you treat them great, if you hired them wrong, that could tear everything down.
Right. So questions like, are you married? Do you have children? Where do you go to church? What you're trying to establish is you're hiring this person 100% on their merits, on their education and their experience and their qualification for the jobs. No extraneous outside information. So you want to keep it as clean and neutral as possible. Nowadays, everything's, on the computer and digital. It makes me cringe to get a resume with someone's picture on it. Because if I don't hire you, is it because I saw you in a wheelchair? I tell people when I help them prepare resumes, don't put what years you went to college, because that dates you. And I'm saying, oh, that's an old fogey. It's going to take forever for that person to catch up with technology. That might be a reason, because we all have our own biases. We all do. And they're not necessarily intentional, and they're not necessarily on the forefront of our brains. So what you want to do is not put yourself in a position to where you've had conversations or inquired about things that are not relative to the job.
But Yara, I'm a nice boss. I want them to know that I'm nice. I'm making friendly conversation, asking them about their marriage, asking them about their children, asking them about their church. Is that not true?
Let me ask you a question. Are you their friend or their boss? Because you can't be both.
Our company culture says we treat each other nicely, and we're curious.
Okay, so be all of that once you've made your hiring decision.
So it sounds like you're saying somebody can incorporate their company culture of we're curious and we're nice. And being curious and nice is asking the people around you about their life. But it sounds like you're saying it's important of when you cut that on,
right?
During that process.
Right. Be nice. If I happen to tell you I'm married and I have 6 kids while we're talking, I've told you that. Now, you don't need to say, well, how old are they? Do they go to daycare? Or so what happens if you have to call in from work? What do you do then? You see, you don't want, even though you're just talking, because you got kids too, and you have the same struggles. You don't want to give anybody the impression that any decision you're making regarding hiring has anything to do with anything besides their qualifications. And that's the key. Now, once they work there, you've made that major decision. Okay, great. Now, incorporate them more into your culture. Say, hey, don't go around interrogating people. But in the course of your day-to-day, you find out that I have to get off early because I have to take my kid such and such. Oh, your kid plays softball. Mine does too. Where do you play at? That's okay. But before that decision is made, you have to be very, very careful. Be nice, be courteous, be polite, all of those things. But don't inquire. Even if they say, for instance, hey, Randall, I have a disability and, whatever. And then you acknowledge. Don't say I'm sorry. Just acknowledge. Oh, okay, I hear you. And don't make any other comments about that. Because later on, and this is a very litigious society we live in, right? People are always trying to sue one another. You don't want to give any ammo. Okay, so let's say I'm a boss. I'm very studious, and I attended one of your engagements, or I hired you, and I find out that my hiring process was completely non-compliant. Do I just start right from here on after, or is there something that I need to do to clean up the past? Okay, so that's a good question, but there's 2 ways to look at that. When you say it wasn't right, was it paperwork and process, or was it just conversation? Yeah, I would say conversation because I came in too hot with the kind and curious. Okay, move forward. And it's documented that I was asking these questions. Okay, move forward. Okay, you found out. When you know better, you what? Do better. Okay. But if it's a process, if it's paperwork, something that wasn't documented correctly, or you didn't fill out a form, yes, go back and do that. Right. Okay. Don't post date it. Date it for today. Make it known that, yes, I recognize I forgot this, and let's do it right now. Right?
Got it.
Fix it. But if you're talking about conversation, once you know better, you do better. So you don't go back and say, hey, I think I asked you some discriminatory questions 2 years ago when I hired you. We don't do that. we move forward. We learn and we grow.
Absolutely. Because I think a lot of people recognize mistakes, right? And they also recognize that once you were made aware of the better way to do it, they give you grace for that. People can forgive mistakes.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's say, all right, I hired them. Great. I followed compliance. I got all the right forms signed. I've been giving them 120%. But it seems like this person isn't right for our culture. Either they're the wrong person or they're in the wrong seat. We don't know for sure, but it doesn't seem like it's a good fit for us. Do we just fire them that day, or how do we do that?
Randall, I'm going to be 100% honest. That good fit thing that you just said is just like loaded. It's loaded. I need you to be able to articulate what is the issue. When you say you're not a good fit for my culture, what does that mean? Does that mean their work ethic? Does that mean their conversation, the way they communicate? Does that mean they don't respect personal space or they're nosy? Does it mean that they are not the get along guy? Does it mean they ask a lot of questions? What does that mean? Because when you can articulate it and identify the root cause of whatever the issue is, now you can begin to address it. The fit is just it's like a black hole. What does that mean? So first, if you were to call me up as a consultant and say, hey, Yara, this is the case, I would ask you these questions. What does that mean? What does that look like not fit?
And that does seem you wouldn't because that seems like the normal phrase that people say they weren't a good fit. But it sounds like what you're saying is not if you're thinking about terminating somebody, you can't just say they're not a good fit, because all the key decision makers or the key stakeholders understands what that means. No, you have to assume that somebody's going to be reading this in the future and they don't know what good fit means.
Right, because a year from now, you could get a letter in the mail that says Yara Banks is suing you for discrimination and you fired her. Who is Yara Banks? Let me go back to the personnel files and look. Oh, yeah, she wasn't a good fit. Well, what does that mean? When you got to go to that deposition or you be interviewed by that investigator, what does that mean? And then depending on what it means, how you address it. So now I know what it means. Now we can talk about a plan of improvement. Now we can talk about how we can coach you through it. Now we can talk about how to get help for whatever the problem is. You always want to try to save the working relationship if you can. You do, because like we talked about earlier, it costs money, it costs productivity, it costs reputational harm, costs to train, costs to rehire, costs to recruit, all of those things. So if it's a matter of just coaching, let's coach. If it's a matter of having a better understanding, and this is something I talk about in my latest book, it's called Executive Blindspot, and it's talking about how misalignment with HR impacts your bottom line. And this is key. A lot of times the C-suite and executive and owners don't have a full understanding of what HR does, so they're missing the mark on being able to utilize what they bring to the table. Right? So if a manager calls up and says, hey, I want to fire Randall, and as HR, I just stamp it, there's a problem. Because what's happening at C-suite, all I'm seeing is, man, there's a lot of turnover. I might know it and I might not, depending on the size of the organization, because it could be all in one area or it could be spread out. You need to identify, why is there so much turnover? Why did we do the exit interviews, and find out if they'll answer you. Why are people leaving? What are the problems? Pay attention to those annual employee surveys. I believe it should be done at least twice a year. How's your management treating you? How's the company treating you? Would you recommend to a friend? What's going on? Is your voice heard? Do you feel valued? Do you feel like you have all the resources to be the best you can be? What else would help? Do you want mentoring programs, coaching programs? Do you need more training, more professional development? What do you need to be the best you can be? And when they tell you, listen. And let them know you listened. Because a lot of times in organizations, what you'll see is we got the survey, we saw these things we need to improve on. We went over here and we improved on those things, but it didn't tell anybody. So then the next survey comes out. What's the point of filling it out? You're not going to do anything anyways. But wait, we already did that. We already have that. We've already done that, but you haven't communicated it. You haven't communicated it. You have to treat your people and your departments as part of a big organization. It can't just be we're the organization and you're over here. They have left hand and right hand has to know what we're doing. I worked at a corporate America one time in an organization, and our job was to oversee, without giving too much information, I'm trying to say, oversee like quality assurance. Okay. I'm going to check your work to make sure you checked all these things off a check sheet. Okay. And I'm like, okay, so she checked this instead of that. What does that mean? Stay in your lane. Okay. I pushed this button instead of that button. What does that mean? Stay in your lane. Literally, my supervisor started telling me it was none of my business. That's not my job. Now, could have done that for multiple reasons. One, he didn't like the fact that I asked questions. Sometimes questions mean I'm challenging authority. Not to me, it means I want to understand, right? So knowing your people is key. The other piece might be that he frankly didn't know either. Okay. But if I don't know what's happening upstream and downstream from my work process, how do I ensure that I care enough to do it right? So what if I check that box this time? Well, downstream, that could cost the company $500,000 because you didn't lock their interest rate in, right? So you need to understand your role and how it plays out in the larger organization.
Yeah.
So my book, we talk about, really motivating your workforce. And that's by telling them what's in it for them. So I worked a job for a while and I felt, you know what? I don't want to work anymore. I do great, but I don't feel like I'm contributing anything. I feel like I'm making rich people richer. And that's how I felt. But if I really would understand the organization, given the opportunity to understand how left and right works together, I would have known at that time, and that was years ago, I would have known that I was actually helping people. I'm sitting in a call center or back office processing loans, mortgage loans, right? And all I see myself is doing paperwork. But guess what? This paperwork is contributing to somebody else's generational wealth. This paperwork is contributing to somebody else having a safe place to sleep at night. So there's other ways to communicate what's in it for them versus just filling out a piece of paper. So you really have to get them involved with the organizational goals. So in my book and in my organization, we feel like there's 3 levels of engagement when it comes to HR. Strategic engagement. That is planning, forecasting, looking at the big picture, the overall organization, right? Then we feel like there's tactical. Tactical is, oh no, somebody filed a complaint. Oh no, a bunch of people are quitting in this department. There's a backlog, or we're implementing a new technology or something like that. We need somebody to come in on a project basis, 3 to 6 months, help us, get this thing together. And then, of course, there's administrative, which everybody's familiar with, and that's the paperwork, the benefits, the payroll, all of that. So there's 3 levels of engagement. What I find is most people think HR is only responsible or capable of that administrative level. But really, when you have HR at the table, they help you determine, okay, I want to build a new facility in Poland, right? I don't know where I came up with that, but in Poland. So how many bodies do we need? What are the visa requirements or immigration requirements needed? What is their minimum wage over there? Where will they, all of those things, you need HR on board to help you figure that out. Not just saying, okay, can you give us a couple job descriptions? There's way more to it than that. Okay. So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, so implementing the full power of HR, right? Implement the full power. It's going to give you a competitive edge.
All right. So I'm a person, I like to read books. The Executive Blindspot is right in front of me, sitting in the bestseller section.
All right.
Who am I and why should I buy this book?
You are a business owner. You are a person who does HR, but doesn't really understand the full power that you have. You are C-suite executive in an organization saying, hey, I feel like we could be doing more. I feel like we're losing money. I feel like we're losing time. What else can we do? That is who's going to read this book, who needs to read this book. Someone who's hands-on and really into growing their people, right? And they're going to get, first of all, they're going to find out what the blind spots are. And they're going to say to themselves, oh my gosh, right in front of my face. Never even considered that. Didn't know that. So you're going to get stuff they didn't know, tools to use and to really get into that workforce, because you've got to massage the workforce. You can't just have it there and just read balance sheets. You really have got to let HR do what HR does. You've got to have HR people in your organization who are strong enough to handle all levels of engagement. Okay. So it's not just about having some certification or having some degree, but like, what experience do you have? Because a lot of times HR people will come out of college and they'll get this certification. I did it. I got my first certification, right? And I'm thinking, hey, I'm ready to rock and roll. Just like any other piece of education, you don't use it, you lose it. And I can honestly say I don't have that certification anymore because I didn't feel like it added anything to me, because I had so much experience. It was just like womp womp. But because of the experience, the different types of industries that I've worked in, the sizes of the organizations I worked in, the type of work I have done speaks volumes over a certification.
So, okay, I got your book. I love it. It's showing me in a lot of my blind spots, but I only have 2 employees. Do I need a HR manual? Is it too soon? And if it is too soon, when should I do it?
I believe an HR handbook or HR manual should be in line right after your business plan, because your business plan projects out 5 years. Do you plan on being on the same place you are on day one that you will be in 5 years? Okay, Randall, I compete for government contracts. Okay, at any time I could get a call from the state of Arizona going, hey, we're going to give you this contract and we need you to be able to execute A, B, C, and you're going to need 20 people to help you do it. Do I have to start from scratch? Oh no, I don't have a job description. Oh no, I don't know how to do salary or benefits. I haven't lined up anything. I don't have an accountant to help with payroll. You should not be waiting last minute. You should be preparing your HR manual, your philosophy about hiring and what you want your culture to be. Again, remember I told you vision and mission. See how early on that was? All of that should be in alignment and ready to go. So when you get that $1 million contract, you can hit that easy button, right? And get it going.
Man, it sounds like you should be prepared for what you want. Exactly. They say dress for the job that you want, act for the job that you want. Sounds like an employer should be having all of the foundation for the company that they want. And even if they have just a couple employees, or before they even open up the doors,
absolutely,
they should have this. They should be consulting with somebody like you just to make sure that they do it the right way. Because you got those crossroads, and right where those roads split is so close. You can easily change another course without it really adversely. But the further you go down the wrong path, it can be tougher to turn around.
That's right. So start it early, even before you make your first hire. We have matter of fact, we have a Grow and Thrive 25 campaign that's talking about small businesses. Before you make your first hire, talk to us. So we're going to give you that foundation. We're going to also give you tools. You got to have a job description. What about a job application? What about onboarding, new hire paperwork? What about a training? We got templates. We've got all of that in a package for people ready to make their first hire, or they only have a handful of people but didn't necessarily start it right, but they want to get it right and go forward. So we're trying to prepare the small businesses, the micro businesses, the Fortune 5 and middle market. It doesn't matter to us the size, but we want to get it right. Because at the end of the day, if it all works right, that balance sheet just continues to be green and green and green. And that's what everybody wants, right? Everybody wants
green. So,
green and green and green.
So please
So,
tell people, where can they go to pick up your book? What outlets?
okay, so the book is on pre-order right now. You can go to our website, which is bnxba.com, BNX Business Advisors. So bnxba.com/executive blindspot. Okay. And then once it's released, the actual release date is January 30th. You'll be able to find it wherever books are sold. And we also have a Kindle version, what do you call that? E-reader version as well. So we're really excited about it. We've got workshops and conferences and trainings already created around this book, because we feel like it's that important that we need to get into those organizations to really hammer home what they're missing and how to pull that out of them.
Man, you got to pull it out.
Yes.
Actually, a lot of people are not familiar with the word educate, which comes from the Latin word educare, I believe. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it means to draw out. A lot of people think to educate means to put something into somebody,
Yes.
but education actually means to draw something out of somebody. And it sounds like what you're doing is educating a lot of these executives and business owners on exactly how they should move. Is there a question that I didn't ask you that I should have?
I have one. I want to talk quickly about how important it is to understand emotional intelligence when you're in leadership. Okay. If you're leading a team, but you don't have your emotions in check, your team is walking on eggshells. They don't know what's right, what's wrong. Can I ask you a question? Can I tell you about a problem? You don't have that open communication. Also, you don't know how to lead them. You don't know how to motivate them. Part of being a leader is understanding your team, understanding their wants, their needs, their desires, understanding what drives them, what's their why. And then be able to speak to them on that level. Understanding that I know when I talk to Randall, he can get kind of heated. He talks loud all the time. That doesn't mean he's mad. So when I go and give him feedback, I understand that I need to lower my voice, speak a little slower so it doesn't trigger him into getting even louder, so we can have a conversation. If I know that somebody tends to be more sensitive, I'm going to take my time. I'm probably going to sit eye level. We're going to sit side by side instead of me standing over you or across the table. We might have a quick little conversation off the floor, right? So not everybody can hear, so I can respect your privacy because you're sensitive about such matters. I need to understand what my triggers are, and I need to understand the triggers of my people. That emotional intelligence bleeds down from leadership to your middle management to your staff and out the door to your customers. You know, if you get somebody on the phone and they're having a bad day because they immediately got an attitude, right? But if I can get to the root of why you're having such a bad day today, you're not going to pass that on to my customers. Not only that, but the ability to, this is key, the ability to gather your team in such a way they know you have their back. You're supposed to be a buffer between them and whatever the next level is. They need to know. If you don't agree with something upper management said, don't go in there and say, well, listen, y'all, I'm just telling you what they said. I don't agree either. That's not the way to communicate. I'm going to shoot it straight. And I know you may not all agree, but this is how we're moving. This is why we're moving. And here's what's in it for you. When you can get people to know and trust that you have their back, you can get them to move mountains. If I come to you and say, Randall, I've been getting complaints that you have some bad breath. Okay. You don't know me. I'm the corporate CEO. I just happen to be in the building for the day. You're going to take offense. But if we work together every day, you know I got your back, and I pull you aside, I'm like, hey, bro, let me let you get this peppermint. You're going to know my heart. You're going to know I'm not doing it to try to call you out, to make you feel any kind of way, because correction without relationship will never work. Never. So you got to know your people, especially one more thing, in the day and age of workplace violence. If Randall, all of a sudden you clean shaven and you such a slide dresser, and now all of a sudden you ain't shaving, you come to work late, your clothes all messy, you're on the phone all the time, sitting at your desk, something's wrong. And that's not your normal behavior. Because I know you, I know something's up. I can pull you aside and say, hey, what's going on? Is there something you want to talk about? Can I get you some help? Do you need to talk to someone? Whatever the case may be. Anytime you hear in the news where there's been some kind of workplace shooting, folks always say, well, I thought this might happen, or he said something like that, or I saw the signs, but nobody ever reported. But as a leader, if I know my people, I know for the most part when something's up. Early intervention is key.
So it seems like the managers, the employee facing managers should be on a see something, say something type of program.
Yes, but not because it's the rules, because they're people. We relate to one another. I care about you as a person, and hopefully you care about me as a person, not just because there's a rule or policy that says that, because it's the right thing to do.
And I think the right thing to do is for us to make sure that everybody gets your name again and how to get in contact. What's the best way to get in contact you, and what's the name for the people who didn't catch it in the beginning?
Sure. I'm Yara Banks, CEO of BNX Business Advisors. Our website is bnxba.com. We are located in Jacksonville, Florida, but our client base is national. My telephone number directly is 904-345-0070, or you can email me at Yara, YARAB, at bnxba.com.
Yeah, that's Yara Banks, Banks. And if you reach out to Yara and say that you found her from the Entreprenudist podcast, she might give you something. It might be a PDF. It might be a consultation. I'm gonna let it be a surprise.
Absolutely.
Let her know that you heard of her and you got this knowledge from her from the Entreprenudist podcast, and she's gonna give you something. It might just be a smile, but she's gonna give you something.
Listen, if I'm coming on here and people are taking the time to listen because they really want to know better, I've got all kinds of gems. I've got all kinds of digital assets to share. I've got all kinds of knowledge.
Absolutely.
To drop in value. So absolutely. I have all of that.
This has been another episode of the Entreprenudist podcast, a place to hear real entrepreneurs and business owners bear it all. If you want to see the video of this prestigious and informative interview and conversation, please check the show notes. This has been another one, and we are gone.